you can always tell when the Tories are sort of upset. And that is when you get a reaction like in the Telegraph or the Spectator. And oh boy, has Chris Skidmore resigning just last night on Friday caused that. So the Telegraph led with their headline for this of Chris Skidmore resigning, saying, thank goodness China's useful idiot has now gone. And of course, Spectator basically saying good riddance to bad rubbish. Of course, this is very much in response to Chris Skidmore being one of, as we said before, one of the few Green Tories out there who gets it. And I've said this, I think, a million times. Look, we are never, ever going to agree 100% with any Tory MP. But there will be the odd occasion where you agree with Tories. For example, levelling up. If the Tories had actually generally committed to levelling up and followed through on what they had said, and especially if you have read the Levelling Up white paper, the first 2 chapters, and they had followed through on that from the Treasury, I'd be like, holy moly, the Tories have actually decided to back levelling up, and it's really going to happen. Holy moly. I suppose a round of applause is in order. And in this case, for Chris Skidmore, he was a massive champion for Britain's transition to net zero. You know, he really believed in that cause and wanted Britain to go in that direction. Now, yes, he was, of course, one of the MPs who did write Britannia Unchained. You know, he doesn't escape completely unscathed, but because of his, I think, advocacy for net zero and the fact the way in which he has stepped down in a very, very principled manner, which again, give the man a round of applause for that. I think is very much well deserved. So we're going to go over his resignation statement, what he's had to say in it, and he was stepping down at the next election anyway. But of course, he has now decided to resign because of the vote that is happening on Monday to expand oil and gas license drilling in the UK. He has now decided to stand down with immediate effect, which will, of course, trigger another by-election, which now means there are 3 by-elections coming up, possibly, in the next couple of months, which, when you look at it, not going to go the Conservatives' way, especially in Chris Skidmore's seat, where it looks like 80% at the moment going to go to Labour. It's a good job that, you know, there isn't a general election anytime soon, is it? But before we do go into reading Chris Skidmore's statement and over the stuff and sort of what he said, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a notification link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And of course, as always, there is the YouTube thank you button and the Pony Club down below as well. So thank you very much to all those people who do help us support the channel. And of course, as always, you can click the like and the share button to help support the channel as well. So on with this. So I do apologize for how small the writing is, but no matter how big I tend to try and enlarge it, it's still pretty much unreadable for you guys. But we're going to go over his statement anyway and see what he said and comment on it. So this was, of course, statement released on the 5th of January, and this is what he had to say. So, next week, the government will be introducing the Offshore Petroleum Licensing Bill to the House of Commons. This bill would, in effect, allow more frequent new oil and gas licenses and the increased production of new fossil fuels in the North Sea. It is a bill that I have already stated my opposition to by not voting in the King's Speech debate in protest at the bill's inclusion in the government's legislative programme. Again, you know, congratulations to Chris Skidmore for, you know, keeping such a principled stance. You know, like I say, I do generally, I'm very, very much a believer that if MPs do have, you know, this principled stance and they do keep on doing this, then, you know, congratulations, guys. You know, keep on with that stance. So, he should be, uh, applauded for that as well. So he continues. As the former energy minister, as the former energy minister who signed the UK's net zero commitments by 2050 into law, I cannot vote for a bill that clearly promotes the production of new oil and gas. While no one is denying that there is a role for existing oil and gas in the transition to net zero, the International Energy Agency and the UNCCC and the Committee on Climate Change have all stated that there must be no new additional oil and gas production on top of what has already been committed. If we are to both reach net zero and reduce carbon dioxide emissions by 2050 and keep the chance of limiting temperature rises to below 1.5 degrees. The decisions taken at COP28 last month also set in motion the global transition away from fossil fuels, as exponential growth of renewable and clean energy power now continues, as we seek to reduce our energy demand on fossil fuels through the adoption of better energy efficient buildings and the industry, as well as adoption of electricity that replaces fossil fuels. There is no case to be made for increasing fossil fuel production at a time when investments should be made elsewhere, in the industries and businesses of the future and not of the past. Again, so far so good. I'm pretty with him on this one. Good on, like I say, good on Chris Skidmore for doing this. But it's pretty very rare these days that we get such a resignation from a Tory resigning on such a principled stance. So, as fossil fuels become more obsolete, expanding new oil and gas licenses or adopting new oil fields will only create standard assets of the future, harming local and regional communities, and should instead be supported to the transition of their new skills and expertise to renewable and clean energy. The Net Zero Review I published a year ago next week, Mission Zero, set out how net zero can be the economic opportunity of this decade, if not our generation, bringing with it hundreds of thousands of new jobs, new growth, new regeneration, and inward investment worth hundreds of billions of pounds. And again, something that whenever we've talked about net zero, that is what the massive opportunity of net zero is. If we do this, it will create new jobs, it will create new growth, it will regenerate all these left behind areas that the Tories talked up in 2019 about how they wanted to level up those places. This is one way how you do it, and yet that is the opportunity. That is the opportunity that is there. And as I've continuously kept on saying, Chris Skidmore is someone who gets that. That is the opportunity that lies before us right now. And Rishi Sunak abandoning our net zero pledges, not investing in all the sort of green new potential that we've got, pretty much means we're going to be very, very much hobbled in this race now to this green industries of the future. We could be very much competing with a lot of other countries on so many of these scales, but of course, thanks to Rishi Sunak and of course the anti-net zero conservatives, that ain't going to happen anytime soon. So he continues. To achieve this, however, requires long-term commitments to energy transitions. That, of course, is where the shall we say the straw that broke the camel's back, because the Tories aren't interested in real long-term commitments to be able to secure this. And of course, it needs to come clear and consistent messaging to businesses and the industry that the UK is committed to climate action as a global leader, as it has been for the past 2 decades. This bill will be debated next week and achieves nothing apart from to send a signal to the globe that the UK is rowing back even further from its climate commitments. We cannot expect other countries to phase out fossil fuels when, at the same time, we continue to issue new licenses or to open new oil fields. It is a tragedy that the UK has been allowed to lose its climate leadership at a time when our businesses, industries, universities, and civil society organizations are providing first-class leadership and expertise to so many across the world and inspiring change for the better. That is something else that is well worth bringing up. we do have a lot of industry leaders here in the UK in net zero transitions, in sort of building these new, net zero industries, communities, etc. It's all right here. But because we are sending that statement, we could very well lose those new industries, those businesses, those university graduates. And that will also be a massive tragedy as well, because that will hinder us as well. Losing all that knowledge, it will be incredibly hard to try and get that back. So he says, I cannot vote, pardon me, I cannot vote for the bill next week. The future will judge harshly those who do. And at a time when we should be committing to more climate action, we simply do not have any more time to waste promoting the future production of fossil fuels when it is ultimately the case of the environmental crisis that we are facing. But I can also no longer continue to condone or continue to support a government that is committed to a course of action that I know is wrong and will cause future harm. Again, bravo for Chris Skidmore doing this. So to fail to act rather than to merely speak out is to tolerate the status quo that cannot be sustained. I am therefore resigning my party whip and instead intend to be free from any party political allegiance. I am deeply grateful for the privilege that I've had the service across government from several departments, including as Energy Minister, attending Cabinet, and to be able to appointed the independent chair of the Net Zero Review. It is nearly 14 years since I first elected as a Member of Parliament for Kingswood, and I am especially grateful to my constituents for placing their repeated faith in me. First and foremost, my duty has been to serve them and their elected representatives. It is with that duty for them in mind as their representative that my personal decision today means that I have long argued that they deserve the right to elect a new Member of Parliament, and I will therefore be standing down from Parliament as soon as possible. It has been a remarkable and wonderful opportunity to serve as Minister for Parliament for nearly 14 years. I now intend to focus all my energy and attention on trying to deliver net zero and the energy transition. Okay, good for that. I am sorry for my actions today or disappointment or upset those, for I will always be personally deeply in gratitude for their support. My excellent staff, local councillors, association members, colleagues, and friends, I apologise to you if you feel let down. I can only hope in time that you can all understand why I've taken the decision today. I will not, however, apologise for not doing what I thought to be the right thing, both environmentally and economically, both for our country and the planet. I can no longer stand by. The climate crisis that we face is far too important to politicise or ignore. We have the responsibility to act where we can to try and protect the future. I look forward to trying devoting my time in 2024 and beyond to making that future a better place in whatever capacity I can. I will not be making any further comment at this stage. Right Honourable, of course, Chris Skidmore. So there you have it. Will this, of course, have any effect? Well, of course, it just means Rishi Sunak's going into the by-elections phase now. Of course, that's a big problem. And of course, with as we said, the polls clearly showing this is yet another potential Labour swing that ain't going to sort of serve them that well. That's just a case of which way this is going to be. It ain't going to go well for them when that happens. But bravo to Chris Skidmore. He's certainly a guy who we do not agree on everything on. And of course, as we've said, one of the co-authors of Britannia Unchained back in the day. Let us not forget that. So, like I say, he isn't, so we say, entirely off the hook, but let's celebrate, when the Tories do something good, or when someone, like this does something good, like in this case. Okay, he truly believes in the net zero cause. Great, excellent. He really does get the net zero transition. Excellent, great, and does understand, the opportunity that does offer to the UK. So, and will they regret this? Will they look back and think, yeah, us allowing Chris Skidmore to resign was a bad thing? I think they will. I really do think they will, because I think sooner or later the Tories will have to turn around and start paying attention to net zero transitions, because you can see it out there right now. Businesses all throughout the country are wanting to and willing to make that transition to net zero. Not a lot of them, though, do need that government support in able to make that transition. We've talked before about the steel industry. It needs about 25 years worth at least of government investment to be able to make that transition, to be able to produce net, carbon neutral steel. We've talked about that before. I think that would be a fantastic investment if they can do that. Other areas as well for sort of green energy, green transition, offshore wind farms, onshore wind farms, all kinds of stuff, solar farms, etc. All this stuff we could have. The Tories promised many years ago, but have never delivered on. So now it is really up to Labour to really help to deliver on those promises. And if Chris Skidmore is going to go out and he's going to campaign for the transition to net zero, excellent, great. I've got no problem with that. Long may he continue to do that and sort of push for that transition to net zero. Like we said, I agree with him on the transition and going forward with net zero. There's probably other stuff, like he said. Like I say, he is one of the authors of Britannia Unchained. But sometimes, when, of course, a Tory even does, in the very, very rare occasion a Tory does something good, it should be applauded and should be held up, because this is how you encourage good standards in public life. The public should react positively when something good like this does happen. So, send Chris Skidmore a supportive tweet. Good on you for standing down, etc. Does he? I think he does deserve a round of applause, honestly. So there you go. So as always, let me know what you think down below, and of course, as always, do remember to click the like and share button, and we'll see you all next time.